Hello, my super friends. Coach James here, and I'm back with another lesson in our Put Off, Put On character development program. Today's lesson is about putting off fear and putting on boldness. As most of you know, fear is that unpleasant feeling you get when you believe that someone or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain, or a threat. Is it ever good to fear? Yes, there are things in life that we should fear. For instance, it is good to have a fear of walking in front of cars. It is good to fear fire or other things that have to do with our safety. We're also to have a healthy fear of God. In the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon writes, "Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all." To fear God means having a healthy reverence and respect for who God is. God is our creator and judge. He is the most powerful being in all the universe. We live in the world he created. We live under his rules. And because of that, we are to fear him. On the same line, we should fear sinning against God. We should fear disobeying God, and we should fear turning away from God. All these fears are good fears. They are for our protection, just like the fear of standing too close to the edge of a cliff. Good fears are given to us from God, and they're meant to keep us safe. On the flip side, there are also bad fears, things we fear that we should not fear. Let me say that again. Bad fears are things we fear that we should not fear. For example, we should not fear the dark. We should not fear monsters. We should not fear sleeping alone. We should not fear doctors or dentists. These are all examples of bad fears, things we fear that we should not fear. Imagine this. Let's say you're with a group of friends and you're all at the store together. One of them suggests that you steal a bag of candy for all of you to share. At that moment, if you're afraid to say no, that is a bad fear. Why? Because you're more afraid of what your friends will think of you than what God thinks of you. Here's another example of a bad fear. Let's say you wanted to compete in martial arts, but you didn't do it because you were afraid to lose or get hurt or embarrassed. That would be a bad fear. Your fear of failing would be greater than your trust that God would help you. Any fear that holds us back from learning new things or having the courage to obey God is a bad fear. God does not want us to fear the wrong things. He wants us to have the courage to always obey him. 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control." In other words, God wants us to be as bold as a lion. Boldness is fearlessness. It is having the courage to do all that God commands you to do, no matter what others will think of you. Think of boldness like water and bad fear like fire. Boldness is the water that drowns out bad fear. Where do we get this boldness? We get it by trusting in God. We get it by trusting in God. In Psalm 56, verses 3 and 4, the psalmist writes, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me?" In another translation, it says, "What can mortal man do to me?" All our life, we will be tempted to give in to bad fears, but we must fight against those temptations. We must fight against it by believing that God is who he claims to be and that he is able to do all that he says he will do. We must fight against it by trusting in God, who is our help, for all those who trust in him. In her book, God's Battle, Sally Michael writes, "To face a roaring lion would be scary, especially if the lion were hungry. But if that lion were in the zoo and there was a heavy glass window between you and the lion, then you would not be afraid. You would trust that the window would protect you. It would keep the lion away from you." That is what it means to trust God. Trusting God means truly knowing that He stands between His children and anything that wants to hurt us. It means looking at our strong God instead of the lions that we fear. Trust in the Lord, my friends, and put on boldness. Your assignment this week is to share one bad fear in your life and how you're going to overcome that bad fear by trusting God and putting on boldness. Be sure to post your video inside the group, and I'll be sure to give you your stripe in class. You guys have a wonderful day.